Everyone knows the Titanic, the ship of dreams. But what if I told you that she had an older sister, a ship that lived a full life, fought in a world war, and even sank a German submarine? This is the story of the Olympic, Titanic's forgotten twin. Launched 2 years before her sister, she was the pride of the White Star Line, and yet she almost vanished entirely from public life. Today, we're going to uncover the untold story of Titanic's lost sister, and a ship that became a legend in her own right, who was later known as the Old Reliable. This is the story of the RMS Olympic. Hey guys, it's Raph the Titanic Guy. Here on my channel, we talk about the Titanic, disasters, and other historical events, so if that's what you're into, give this video a like and consider subscribing. So let's go back to the very beginning. At the dawn of the 1900s, a race was underway across the Atlantic. Back in the day, the only way to get across the Atlantic was through ocean liners, through ships. Now at this time, there were two major players who had the Cunard Line and the White Star Line. Now, Cunard had just launched the Lusitania and the Mauretania, and these were the fastest ships in the world. Now, the White Star Line was looking for a way to compete with this, but the chairman, J. Bruce Ismay, had a different idea. Instead of competing on speed, he was going to build the three most luxurious ships the world had ever seen. They designed a trio of ships that would redefine ocean travel. And these ships were going to be the Olympic, the Titanic, and later, the Britannic. The Olympic would be the first. She would be the test bed, the prototype, and the ship that would set the standard for everything else that followed. Construction on the Olympic began in 1909, and the Olympic was launched in October of 1910. And by June 1911, she was ready for her maiden voyage. At the time, the Olympic was hailed as the largest and most luxurious liner in the world. She had elegant lounges, a grand staircase, Turkish baths, all of it would later be mirrored aboard the Titanic. This was an extremely exciting time for the White Star Line, for ocean travel in general. It was an incredible moment. However, just a few short months later, disaster struck. On September 20th, 1911, while leaving Southampton, the Olympic collided with the Royal Navy cruiser HMS Hawke. Now, the impact tore open her starboard side and flooded two watertight compartments. The damage was quite severe, and repairs took months at Harland and Wolff. Fortunately, the Olympic was okay, she remained afloat, and we could see, and the world could see, that the new safety systems of the watertight compartments did actually work. However, these repairs on the Olympic actually delayed the completion of Titanic because priority was given to the Olympic. Interestingly enough, this delay right here would later spark one of history's most persistent conspiracy theories. We'll get into this a little bit later in the video. Still, Olympic returned to service, slightly scarred but majestic as ever. Now let's talk about the sinking of the Titanic and where Olympic was. On the night of April 14th, 1912, Olympic was at sea about 500 miles away from her sister ship. When Titanic's distress calls went out, the Olympic's wireless operator, Ernest James Moore, picked up the message. Captain Herbert Haddock immediately offered assistance, but an immense ice field stood between them. And by the time Olympic could have reached the scene at the Titanic, Carpathia had already arrived and rescued the survivors. They were just simply too far away to do anything about it, unfortunately. After Titanic's loss, the Olympic underwent major safety overhauls. There were more lifeboats that were installed. They raised the bulkheads and improved the watertight doors. She basically carried the same DNA of Titanic, but now, after everything that had happened, a sobering lesson was etched into her design. She was not invincible. She was not unsinkable. Two sister ships built the same way, yet only one would live to tell the tale. Now, here's where history takes a bit of an interesting turn, because we are now at the precipice of the start of the Great War, and things get very, very interesting here. But before we go into that next section, if you guys have been staring at my Titanic shirt here and you want to get your very own, you can do so at titanicguy.com. When World War I broke out, the Olympic was requisitioned by the British government and transformed into a troop ship. She was stripped of all the luxury and she was armed for danger and painted in dazzle camouflage. It was a very unique design and a very interesting period in Olympic's life. She looks pretty epic, I gotta say. Now, the Olympic, she transported hundreds of thousands of troops across the Atlantic from Canada and the US over to Europe, to join the war efforts. But her most legendary moment in this entire period came in May of 1918. So here's what happened. While crossing the English Channel, the German U-boat U-103 attempted to torpedo the Olympic. Now, Olympic's crew spotted the periscope and they opened fire, and Captain Bertram Hayes made a very daring move. As this was happening, he turned the ship toward the submarine and sliced through it with the port propeller. She basically rammed this German U-boat and sank it. This obviously was a very daring move that prevented huge disaster. Unfortunately, 9 sailors died, but 35 survived, and they were rescued by the USS Davis. From that moment on, the RMS Olympic was now known as Old Reliable. Throughout the 1920s, she was a favorite among loyal travelers. She was steady, dependable, luxurious. She was Old Reliable. But by the end of the decade, times were really changing. Think about the early 1930s. The Great Depression hit. Passenger numbers plummeted, and newer, faster ships were beginning to dominate the Atlantic. In 1934, the White Star Line actually merged with Cunard, which is very interesting because these were two bitter rivals, think of like Coke and Pepsi, merging. And it was at this moment that the age of Olympic came to an end. The Olympic at this point was now very old. She couldn't compete with giants and brand new ships like the Queen Mary. And after 24 years of service, Old Reliable was finally retired. So what exactly happened to the Olympic after retirement? In 1935, the Olympic was decommissioned and sent to Jarrow for dismantling. Her fittings, her interiors, all of that was auctioned off, and pieces of her grandeur were scattered across Britain. Now, of course, we can't talk about the Olympic without talking about the infamous Olympic conspiracy theory. So I'm not going to get into it too heavily in this video because I have a whole entire video dedicated to this topic. You can watch this video right here. But basically, this is how the conspiracy theory goes. The claim of this conspiracy theory is basically that the Titanic and the Olympic were switched after Olympic collided with the HMS Hawk, which we discussed earlier. And the theory states that the Olympic, which has now been switched out and made to look like the Titanic, was intentionally sunk to pull off an insurance scam. Of course, when we look at all the facts, experts throughout the decades, myself, we've done a deep dive. You know, the facts very, very evidently show that this, of course, is not true. Once again, you can take a look at my video. Basically, every photograph, construction record, and of course, the shipyard number matches Titanic's. We know that Titanic is, in fact, Titanic at the bottom of the ocean. But it is a fascinating theory. If you want a full breakdown, like I said, you can take a look at that video. Now, let's reflect on the Olympic. Why is Olympic so important? Why does Olympic still matter? While her sister's story ended in tragedy, Olympic's life was a story of perseverance. She saved lives, she carried soldiers home, and weathered 2 decades of history. If Titanic taught the world about human error, the Olympic showed us human perseverance. She really, truly earned her nickname, Old Reliable. Now, she may not have a movie or museum of her own, but without the Olympic, we know that there would be no Titanic as we know it. Now, I want to hear from you guys. Do you think the Olympic deserves a movie of her own? She lived an incredible life. I would love to know what you guys think. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. If you're interested in watching more Titanic content, you can watch either this video here or this video here. I will see you guys in the next one.